so much, Peterson. That was such a warm welcome. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Great. All right. It's amazing to have everybody join in. I can still see us quite a few people joining in. So let's already get started. I would like to take this moment to firstly acknowledge each one of you who is here to attend the session. And why do I say that? Particularly because all of you could have been anywhere else at this moment. Literally, at this moment, you could have chosen to be anywhere else. For instance, you could be sitting at work, attending at a meeting, or you could have chosen to work on a project that requires some immediate help, or you could have just chosen to take the day off and watch Netflix, or you could be holidaying on Goa or Maldives or wherever you want to go. But right now, you're logged into this call with some intention. And I want to give my gratitude towards that intention because you could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here today. And that speaks that you're wanting to develop yourself at a whole next level. And I respect that. So thank you all for logging in for this session today. And Peterson did introduce me. Allow me to speak a little about myself so that I can give you a little context of where I'm coming from. He did mention I am an army brat. And why do I say that? Because my father was in the army and my grandparents were in the army. You can imagine the discipline in the house. I'm kidding, there was zero discipline in the house. We were an army household, but rarely was there discipline in the house. But I give a lot of credit to that lifestyle. 9 schools across 16 years of education all over the country. I promise you, I wasn't thrown out of any one of them. But again, each station they got posted to, each school that I joined, everywhere becoming aware of how cultures across our country are still so alike. And that ability to be able to connect with people, irrespective of their past, irrespective of their caste, irrespective of where they came from, and being able to connect with people with absolute humility, dignity, and being able to create presence with them is what I give credit to the army lifestyle for honing inside. And with that same intention, while I was still discovering what I want to do, I further went and studied bachelor's in biotechnology, master's in clinical research, figuring out what I'm supposed to do in this world. I worked in the healthcare sector for 10 years, 5 years in J&J, figuring out which are the appropriate drugs for asthma, cardiology, and another 5 years in a healthcare company called Amgen Health. What I'm doing today is very different from what my past was. And I would like to say I am grateful to the universe for showing me a path. I'm grateful for having discovered that it gives me great satisfaction to help people present themselves in the best light. If people can start to identify, yes, there's a gap. I want to get here and I'm here, and somewhere there's a gap. If they can identify the gap, I can help them further understand how to build that using the power of communication. And now it's been 8 years that I've been a coach in this sphere of communication. And with that same thought, I would like to take us into this conversation of communicating with impact. Now, all of us here have our own versions of what it means to communicate with impact. If I could come to the denominator of it, or the most common thought about communication that all of us often have, is the conversation that communication is literally if we can be aware of every thought that comes out, every word that comes out of our mouth, every word that we assimilate through our ears. So the more specifically and clearly we communicate through the words out of our mouth, the more specifically clearly we get the words in through our listening ears, and of course our body language, and of course our tone. So these are the usual elements in which we speak about communication and our understanding of communication. Today, I'd like to take you on a different journey. The journey that I'm going to take you through is something that I am inspired by a lady called Miss Louise Evans, and I invite you all to look up her work because she's done some amazing work in communication. And what I share with you today is quite inspired by her work. I'm going to be taking you through a simple model of 5 chairs. 5 chairs today, where you will see yourself, watch yourself, how you may shift from chair to chair depending on the situation in front of you. And why are we taking a model of chairs? Well, let me just tell you. But most of the communication that we do, we end up looking at what is coming out of our mouth, what is going in from our ears, how we're expressing ourselves in body language and the tone. Today, we're going to go 2 steps behind. Today, we're going to say, hey, before the words come out of my mouth, what's really going on here? Before anything comes in through my ears, what's really going on here? We don't always focus on what's happening here. We end up focusing on the word value here. And this is where we're now going to shift to the foundational part of communication, starting to see how at a foundational level, it's a thought that begins to then transcribe everything that comes out, whether it's through our mouth or everything that we take in from any form of environment. So let me get on to the model. And when I get onto that model, I'd like you to all be aware. Keep at your background a difficult situation that you have recently come across. You may have been with a difficult manager or a difficult client or a difficult situation that may have occurred to you. And I want you to be in awareness. I'm inviting you again. I want you to be in the awareness of which chair do you fit into in that situation. So stay with me and allow me to switch on my slides right now. All right. Peterson, could you confirm? Can you see the chair slides?
Yes, I can see them.
Thank you so much. Super. So what we see over here is a set of 5 chairs. And each of these chairs will help you see a certain thought process that ends up happening to us in a given situation. All these colors represent that. And feel free to take notes, write this down so that you're more and more privy to what is the kind of thinking that happens in each chair. So let's begin with the first chair that you see as the red chair. It's called as the red chair. It's called as the attack chair. And it's also represented by the animal, the jackal. Now, why the animal jackal? Let me give you a little idea. A jackal is a very, very sharp animal. It has such amazing listening ability. Something kilometers away, it's able to hear that with absolute precision. It is a very alert animal. Now, as the positives look really good, it's a smart animal, it's alert, has amazing listening ability. But this animal is also somebody which is always ready to attack, ready to pounce, out there to catch its prey, or out there to catch anything from it which it senses threat. That's the kind of behavior that we end up emulating in the human world. When? Let me give you an idea. And you might want to take this down. The minute you catch yourself at a thought level, maybe you're not saying the words here, but the minute you catch yourself at a thought level, criticizing someone, blaming someone, having a strong opinion about someone, you're labeling someone. Any of these 4 will represent that you are on the red chair. And when you're on the red chair, your words that come out of your mouth get impacted because of the thought. You may not necessarily say everything that you're thinking, but words get impacted in the process. And I'll show you exactly how. But like I said, when you can see yourself being critical, when you can see yourself labeling people, you're being very opinionated about it, or you're blaming somebody, that's the red chair. And another thing that happens in the red chair is that when you're thinking here about who's right, I'll give you a quick example. Imagine you walk up to your manager and you say, I have a proposal that maybe we could do a little budget saving on the project by making this shift in our plans, and I would like to discuss that plan with you. And your manager says, if we really had to save budgets, I think it'd be a better idea if we just stop going out for drinks every other weekend. And then you're stumped. And then you say, we've gone out only once this month. And the second time was because it was a friend's birthday bash. What's the issue? In that moment, you actually went to propose another plan. And the manager said something. And then in that moment, you forgot what your original motive was. You jumped onto making the person right. Like you had to communicate what was the right thing versus what was the issue. And that's how we end up derailing from our motives. What were we there to achieve? We end up derailing from there. if we can be aware that I'm trying to be right in this conversation versus trying to meet a motive shift. So we've got to be aware. Now, this is just an example of what ends up happening in the red chair, and we can go to depths of it, but this is just a bit of a trailer. And while you're understanding this red chair, I now want to take you to the yellow chair. The yellow chair is what we call as the self-doubt chair, and it's also called the hedgehog chair. Now, I'd like you to focus on this animal. This animal literally has a characteristic that the minute it sees threat, it turns inwards, like completely rolls in like a ball. So if I was to give you in a nutshell, the characteristics of the yellow chair are literally the red chair turned outside in. If the red chair is about blaming people all the time, putting them in their place, being critical towards them, having a strong opinion towards them, the yellow chair is literally that, you towards your own self. So this is the chair in which you're talking like, I don't think I can do this. I'm just not cut out for this. When will I just get it all together? When will I figure this stuff out? Why am I on this project? Why did they select me? Why didn't they take the other person? The other person is so good, etc., etc. You may not end up saying these words from your mouth. What shows up as an expression from you on your body, on your words, is very different from what ends up happening here. But in this chair, what I'm inviting you to become aware of is how often do you end up going in that direction, thinking that you aren't good enough. Now, that is the red chair and the yellow chair, and many of you may resonate with me on how often you end up being in these chairs. I'll give you an example. I was in the red chair this morning with my daughter. She hadn't cleaned her room, and I was quite upset with that. It did show up. I often am sometimes in the yellow chair as well. There's sometimes when there are very strict deadlines coming, and I can sometimes be there. So the red chair and the yellow chair is not a bad place to be. It's not like, oh my God, if you're there, you're not going to produce results. Many of you have actually produced a lot of results using both the chairs. So it's not a bad chair. The conversation is, there is an impact of the chair you're sitting on, and often a long-term impact may sometimes not work for you. And you want to be careful about it. The lesser in awareness we are about where are we, what time, which chair are we on which time, the more the impact builds. And over a period of time, we don't like the impact. The impact either shows up as us being very aggressive, or the impact shows up as us being too submissive, or sometimes having a very passive power play. This is what ends up happening in the red or the yellow chair. It's a choice that you make, where do you want to be? So while you're still figuring it out, that where do I really approach conversations from? Do I come from the red chair or do I come from the yellow chair? Let me introduce you to more chairs and try to give you another perspective here. So bringing you to the green chair, the third chair, it's also called as the wait chair, and it's represented by the animal, the meerkat. Now let me tell you the fun part about this animal and why I like it so much. So I got a chance to watch this on National Geographic, and when I saw this animal, I got such a kick. Why? Because this animal, as fuzzy and cute as it may look, it has the ability to observe like the Buddha. What do I mean by that? This animal, as a regular way of functioning, can go in the middle of the grasslands, come up in this upright position, holding itself up, can just continue to look away far into the distance, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, almost like as if it's a sentinel on duty, like guard standing outside a mansion, just looking straight ahead. And then after a while, it'll turn its head and it'll look in another direction. And it'll keep looking and keep looking and keep looking. It won't flicker anything. It won't move his hand, nothing at all. We'll just keep looking like as if it was observing. And that's the chair where the whole transformation happens between a reaction to a response. It's what we often call as the moment of pause. And this animal represents what can happen when we pause. Not pause to abuse, but pause to actually watch that we are abusing in our head. Not pause to call ourselves duds. Pause to catch ourselves calling ourselves duds. It is the ability to be able to actually see ourselves, see our mind, see our thoughts that are rummaging here before you utter another word. And through an example that I'll just lead you through, you'll see the power of this chair and how it helps you just turn over. I'll give you another thing, and you might want to write this down. When you're in the green chair, you have the ability to identify an external event, and if you attached a meaning to it. Now, what does a meaning mean? I'll give you an example. Imagine a senior officer, senior manager walks into office and the person doesn't greet you. The person passed by your desk, but the person doesn't greet you. One meaning you may attach, that person is upset with you. Another meaning you may attach, the person doesn't care about you. The third meaning you may attach, the person must be in a really, really bad mood. Watch the meanings you attach to the events that happen outside. We make our assumptions, we put two and two together, making 24 sometimes. The awareness that I just thought of something which I may not necessarily have solid proof of. The ability to watch yourself think is what the green chair is about. The ability to catch an observation becoming a meaning is what the green chair is about. I'm going to take a pause here and I'm going to ask you in the chat room, could you all tell me that you guys got up till the green chair? So can I hear from you, with you on the green chair, Meera? Can I hear that from you in the chat room so that I know you guys are with me? With you on the green chair, Meera. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you, Sapna. Got it, Devanshu. All right. Thank you, Tushar. Got it. You heard me right, Tushar. I've got the observation right. Yes. Thank you, Shweta. Yes. With you on the green chair. Super. Super. Okay. All right. All right. Looks good. Looks very good. Super. So stay with me on the green chair and just keep observing what's happening. Keep assimilating what's happening, because now you're going to start to see how to start shifting your patterns of communication, which may have been arising from the red and the yellow chair with not being completely aware. So let's watch it. Thank you, guys. So now going further and saying, okay, now that I'm starting to understand what the green chair is about, now, the green chair isn't about spoken words. It isn't about really speaking and expressing ourselves. And to us, communication matters a lot because we also want to express ourselves. Many of us find ourselves very stifled in our expression. We're not free to express what we really want to express. So that's the part where I now like to take you, that the green chair only helps bring that moment of transformation. And then there's something more possible. So let's watch that. So there is the blue chair, the fourth chair. It's the dolphin chair, and it's also called the detect chair. Now, why the dolphin? Firstly, nobody ever reported an angry dolphin or a lack in self-confidence dolphin. None of those expressions ever occur for a dolphin. You've heard of a smart dolphin, you've heard of a thriving dolphin, you've heard of a hero dolphin, you've heard of a savior dolphin, you've heard of a fun and joyful dolphin, but you haven't heard of any of those others that I said earlier. A dolphin represents for us, you know, those moments when somebody walks into a room and the room literally lights up. Those kind of people who have this charisma where people get attracted to them and want to talk to them. Some of them may not even have charisma, but the minute they open their mouth and they start to share their thought, wow, does everybody stop to listen to them? That's what the blue chair is. The blue chair is where we normally hear people as being assertive. The blue chair is where we see people as always saying the right thing at the right time. They just know what the room needs and they're able to say it at that time. That's what the blue chair is. And many of us will be like, yeah, Meera, you know what? Just what's the formula to get here? Is there a path? Can you give me where is there a magical pill? What can I do so that I arrive here, right? So in the chat box with me right now, you've got to say, yes, Meera, I won the blue chair. Can I hear it from all of you? I won the blue chair. Could you state this so that I know that you're with me before I reveal the formula to you? Super, Pulkit. You got that. I'm glad you wanted Akanksha. Rakhi, one blue. Super. Super. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now that we've got you all in, let's give you what it takes to be on the blue chair. Write this down, and I will give you a little demo of it, but you've got to write this down so that you understand this better. For us to be in our best self-expression, people in the blue chair are always and always aware of two things. while they have certainly mastered a good amount of the green chair, that is the ability to observe things, the ability to see things and separate the meaning that came with it, people in the blue chair are aware of two things, and those two things are, what am I feeling at any given moment of time, and what do I need? They're quickly aware of their feelings in the slightest of moments, and they're also instantly aware of what do they need. And when I say the word feeling and the word need, I'd like you to be aware, many of us understand feelings as something very passive, something like to just talk about, I feel like doing this. We don't really have a very strong, in depth understanding of feelings. Our vocabulary of feelings is happy, sad, good, bad, upset, frustrated, maximum. That's all that we will end up saying in terms of what are you feeling? Our feelings could be very deep. It could be I'm feeling connected, I'm feeling joyous, I'm feeling enabled, I'm feeling envy, I'm feeling desolate, I'm feeling really sad. Feelings go far. What does the blue chair have to do with it? The blue chair identifies that what you are feeling is not because of the external stimulus. What is happening outside is just a stimulus. The blue chair identifies whatever it is that I'm feeling is because a need inside me has not been fulfilled. What I'm sharing with you is a concept from this amazing psychologist, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, an amazing work that you'll find in nonviolent communication. But the concept of what are you feeling and what do you need? If these two things are clear, the person is able to articulate what he wants or what she wants from that situation or the other person. Again, like I said, I'll give you a demo and you'll watch the whole thing. So it is those people who don't sound aggressive, but they sound assertive. They sound like they're being very respectable about the other person and themselves and then asking for what they want without putting anybody down. That's the power of the blue chair. Quite the bond chair, as we say. Now, if you're with me on the blue chair, many of us are like, yeah, let's make this happen right now. Now, it takes a little habit, it takes a little exercise to start to master your feelings and needs and be able to articulate it. But while you're still loving the blue chair, I have one more place to take you, the purple chair. Why? Because in the blue chair, you will look like the hero of the show. You will look like the rock star. You will have the right things to say at the right time, and you will just be able to attract people with your charisma. But that's what the thing is. The blue chair is all about you. And it's not like it should not be about you. Of course, by all means, many a time, some situations, please be about you. At the same time, if things were just about you, when would you connect with others? So the blue chair is about being so connected with yourself that you're so aware of your needs that you're able to ask for it. In the blue chair, you can certainly achieve your goals, but you also realize that you work with people. And just like awareness of self is important, awareness of others is equally important. So the blue chair is about understanding self and being aware of self. The purple chair is about understanding the other person and becoming aware of the other person. Let me give you a representation of how that happens. So the purple chair is represented by the animal giraffe and it's called Connect. Why? So the animal giraffe, if you notice, for two characteristics. One, it has the longest neck among all animals. Two, it is the only land animal with the biggest heart. What do each of these represent? The neck of this animal represents the ability to see much beyond what is happening right here at our feet. The ability to see much, much beyond. How does that relate to the human world? You know, when you're in a conversation and you miss to understand that this conversation I'm having with this person has consequences. It's not just a very frivolous conversation, I can have you and finish it off. But the ability to be in a conversation and see miles ahead and realize, yeah, every word I speak has an impact, so I better watch what I'm saying because this will have later consequences. And similarly, the fact that this animal has the biggest heart for me represents empathy. And let me tangibilize empathy for you, because we all have our own meanings and understandings of empathy. We sometimes confuse it with sympathy also. When I say tangibilize, I really want you to get it. If the blue chair was about knowing your feelings and your own needs, the purple chair is about knowing the other person's feeling and the other person's need. If you can get that, your ability to connect with the person goes up significantly higher. You can talk to that person, like we say, in their language, because you got what they needed. And it wasn't an assumption that this is what they need, but you really got what they needed. So while you're getting a hang of these chairs, allow me to take you into a quick demo of what a conversation may look like in a situation, in a difficult situation, when you arrive in these chairs. So you can see all these chairs again, and I'll give you a situation. Consider. Consider the situation where you are required to co-present to a certain set of clients or a certain set of stakeholders in the organization. The situation is that your credibility for the amazing awesomeness that you are and the amount of work that you have done, is that credibility isn't known to the other people in the room. They just aren't aware. Maybe one person out of four may know, but the rest of the three in the room aren't really aware of your work and your amazingness, like I said. So when you go into that room, you get an opportunity to present and you start to share. Now, barely 10 minutes into your presentation, one person in the middle, for reference sake, let's call him Mr. Mehta. And no offense to any Mr. Mehtas on the call. I really just picked this name out of nowhere. But imagine there's a Mr. Mehta who says, "This is rubbish. This idea is not going to work. No, it's not going to work." This is what he says, and he pushes himself back in the chair, crosses his hands, and then there's awkward silence. In that moment, the minute he said that, you may be operating from the red chair, which is very natural for many of us to do. So the red chair, the conversation that may end up happening is, "What a jerk. Who does he think he is? इसको नौकरी पे रखा किसने? Doesn't he have the slightest idea of business etiquette? Like, can he just take a moment and have a way of giving me feedback rather than saying, this is rubbish, it's not going to work? Really? How dare he?" Now, all of this has run through your mind at a split second. You've labeled him, you've criticized him, in your head you have judged him to be right or wrong. All of those have happened in your moment, in that moment. But then you also be trained in the etiquette of, oh, you know what, clients, stakeholders, you can't be rude to them. So you get your decorum together. Unfortunately, because of all the thought process that has happened, what ends up coming out of your mouth, even though the words may be apt, the tone gets impacted. For example, the first thing that you end up saying is, "Yes, Mr. Mehta, I think you have something to say." Stern tone, stuck body language, evasive eyes. I don't need to teach you body language. All I'd like you to focus on is, where is your thought process when you said what you said? Because all of that external gets impacted by what's happening here. And that's an example of what may happen when you're in the red chair. You're making another enemy in the room. And this is where I'd like to introduce you to. The more we judge people, the less time we have to love them. And let me say this differently. You might want to write this down. The more we judge people, the less time we have to understand them, to get to them. Because the mind takes over judgment as the busy space, and there just isn't enough mind space to be able to think anything from the other person's perspective. That's the impact of the red chair. And I wanted to get you to be aware of that. So like I said, that's one of the responses that could happen. But then again, let's look at what else is possible. So you might be in the yellow chair, and what happens in the yellow chair is what you'd like to see. In the yellow chair, what could happen immediately as a dialogue in the person's mind? Imagine it's me, and then I'm thinking, as soon as Mr. Mehta says, "This is rubbish. It's a rubbish idea. It's not going to work." I'm sitting in the yellow chair, and the first thing that goes through my mind is, "Uh-oh, I'm doomed. They should have never sent me. I wish they had sent Peter. He's so much better at this. This is oh my God, what do I do now? I think I've lost it. And then while this whole confusion is going on here, what ends up coming out of your mouth is, uh, I'm really sorry, Mr. Mehta. Would you like me to explain this any differently? How would you like to do this? There is zero power, zero assertion in that voice. It's full of doubt, it's full of fear, it's full of everything getting expressed out there. And not that fear is a bad emotion, every emotion is worth embracing. But it's the lack of awareness of what's really happening here is what ends up stumbling outside from us. And that's the yellow chair for you. And this is where I'd like you to see this. The highest form of intelligence is the ability to observe ourselves without judging. Our ability to actually just look at ourselves, observe ourselves without judging, listening to the thought here without necessarily attaching a meaning to it. And while you saw the red and the yellow chair and the impact of it in that situation, many of us would be looking at, yeah, what would be the most appropriate way to respond? And then I invite you to the green chair, where you aren't exactly responding, but you're acknowledging the environment. You aren't uttering a word, but you're observing everything that happened. You observe what's happening inside, you observe what's happening on the outside. In the green chair, as soon as Mr. Mehta says, rubbish, this idea is not going to work, you take a pause. You literally pick up your glass of water and you have a drink. And you allow those 3-4 seconds to pass. Because you know what's possible? In those 3-4 seconds, you may realize you don't always have to fill into a silence. It may be permissible for others to fill into the silence. Where a 3 to 4 second gap happens, maybe Mr. Mehta could speak a little more and we could understand what is he referring to. But we don't necessarily need to jump in. Maybe somebody else from the audience may say something. But without losing eye contact with people, being there in that moment, being present, not being evasive, not hiding away, but being there, taking a sip, with a very gentle smile, observing that moment for the way it is. What is Mr. Mehta saying? What are others saying? Where is this headed? What am I saying? That's the green chair. And the green chair, like I said, is this neutral space. So you are watching things happen, but you're not attaching a meaning to it. There's no strong opinion in it. So you have your way, I have my way. As for the right way and the only way, it does not exist. So Mr. Mehta has an opinion and I have a different opinion, and it is okay. We're allowed to have different opinions. That's the ability of this green chair. And now when you're watching the effect of us coming all the way to here, if you're transitioning till here, then allow me to take you to the blue chair. And now with the blue chair, let me share with you. If you recall, the differentiating factor was how much can you identify what you are feeling and what you need at any point in time. So let's get down to it. Imagine you're there and Mr. Mehta says what he says. This is a rubbish idea, it's not going to work. What will majority of humans in that room feel? I'll open it up for you. You'll feel hurt. H-U-R-T. You will feel hurt. It is okay to acknowledge that. I'm hurt. I was interrupted. I'm hurt. And what does the person need? The person needs to be heard. I need to be heard. So you're not feeling hurt because Mr. Mehta said what he said. You're feeling hurt because there was a need inside to be heard. There was a good chance that had your presentation gone through, or you had communicated the idea that you came for, and you got an acknowledgement from the other side, you experienced being heard, then no matter what a Mr. Mehta says wouldn't have mattered to you. But in that moment, you didn't feel heard, like you wanted to be heard. So this is what happens in the blue chair. People in the blue chair are able to detect that, and so their conversation spills out beautifully. They say, Mr. Mehta, I can see that you have something to say, and I can sense it's important. At the same time, I have something to share, which over the next 10 minutes may open up a different world for you. May I have just the next 10 minutes to share this idea in its totality? And then I'm happy to listen to you. May I have those 10 minutes? Now, the blue chair is the ability to acknowledge the other person for sure, and at the same time assertively ask for what you want without ignoring, without putting them down, but being able to say, I get you and I would like this. That's the blue chair for you. And then you can always make a choice. Sometimes you don't want to be in the blue chair. Where else would you be? You might be in the purple chair. Like I said, there's nothing right or wrong about the chairs. Given the situation, you take your call. But the blue chair represents that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And when we say knowing yourself, I gave you two tangible things. What are you feeling at any point in time? Your vocabulary about your feelings needs to develop. And what do you need? And while all of this is coming together, I now want to take you to the purple chair. I'm going to just take a moment and I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to invite you all to put it in the chat box. The purple chair is about identifying what does Mr. Mehta, what is he feeling and what does he need? What according to you, please share in the chat box, what according to you is Mr. Mehta feeling and what does he need? Could you put it there? Let's have you all participate. Thank you, Kazi. Thank you, Parvati. I'm loving your feedback here. And I'm waiting for you guys to tell me, what do you think Mr. Mehta is feeling? And what does Mr. Mehta need? He says, this is a rubbish idea. It's not going to work. What is he feeling? Is he feeling joyous? He's feeling awful. Got it, Parvati. Yes, he's feeling awful. Okay, all right. Hurt. Okay. So, Mukesh, you think that Mr. Mehta is feeling hurt. Mr. Mehta is not the presenter. Huh? Imagine I was the presenter. I was hurt when Mr. Mehta said what he said. But what is Mr. Mehta feeling? Maybe some attention, or maybe he's right. Okay, so Aditi is saying maybe maybe some attention, or maybe he's right. Okay, all right. So Aditi is saying that he's feeling that Mr. Mehta is feeling that he's right. Okay, so Aditi, you told me that Mr. Mehta is thinking that he's right. He's not feeling right. Feeling is different. He may be thinking that he's right, but he may not be feeling right. But good attempt. Okay, Shweta says Mr. Mehta is feeling himself superior and knows everything. So, Shweta, you may have detected the thought very well. Mr. Mehta may be thinking like that, and we don't know that. But the minute you think like that, Shweta and Aditi, when you guys think like that, can you see that you are operating from the red chair? Because you just put a blame on him. This is what he is thinking. And it can sound like a blame. So, which is why I'm asking you to start shifting the focus. You know, we're so used to calling people names and labels. That happens to us naturally. But that's why I'm asking you to start shifting from putting a label, blame, criticism. I'm asking you to start shifting to what is the person feeling and what does the person need. Okay, so maybe Mr. Mehta is offended by idea or other idea would be accepted. Okay, he may be jealous. Akanksha Thakur, that's the first feeling word that I got. Yes, he may be jealous. Got it. So he may be jealous and his need may be a certain set of acceptance for himself. He may be needing attention for himself, possibly. He wants involvement of listener for alternate ideas. Okay, Sanjay. Again, it's a thought. It's a thought, but not a feeling. Tushar, he's in a denial mode. When you say that, can you see that you're operating from the red chair? Because you put a judgment on him, an assessment on him. Any assessments, any judgments fall into the red category. That's how I'm asking you to get a feeling. What is he feeling? Even if you say it's a feeling like he's feeling angry. I wouldn't say neutral position if he's saying this is a rubbish idea. He's very opinionated right now. Okay, Parvati, he thinks his perception is right. Again, you're saying what is he thinking? But what is he feeling? What is he feeling? So Vani says Mr. Mehta is answerable, hence he's putting it across. He may be answerable and he's putting it across. So he may be feeling disappointed. If he is in charge of making sure the project happens and he's listening to you present, he may be feeling disappointed. That's a feeling. Mr. Mehta is degraded, need is to be acknowledged. Okay, got it, Rakhi. Now degraded is not a feeling, but I get where you're going with this, Rakhi, right? He could be feeling low and his need is to be acknowledged, but degraded is a very, it's a labeled word. Okay, a superiority complex, got it. Mukesh, I get it. Maybe your analysis is right, but the minute you say that, we are disconnecting from understanding the person. You just put a label on him that he has a complex, and now we're disconnected from understanding that person better. You want to understand that person better, start to focus more on the feelings and the needs so that you can talk to him in his language. He wanted to bring his own idea. Lakshmi, now you're talking about what he needs, right? So Lakshmi, you're saying he wanted to express. Mr. Mehta said what he said because he wanted to express his own idea. So now you're getting to the need. That's great. Milind, you're right. He could be exasperated. Absolutely. Disturbed, disappointed, Parvati, you got that. Mukesh, when you use the word stubborn, see, I'm loving all the participation you guys have given. This is fantastic. I'm so glad to go all the way down to the list. Mukesh, when you say stubborn, stubborn is a label. Stubborn is what you call somebody. But feelings is an identification of what the person is really feeling. You can't feel stubborn. You may call yourself stubborn, but you can't feel stubborn. So feeling. This is where I'd like to tell you. I love the participation. So your neurons have fired up and now you guys are ready for this. So let me tell you. Mr. Mehta is probably feeling disappointed. When he says this is a rubbish idea, it's not going to work. Let's consider there's a good chance this man has been through experience of such things working or not working. When somebody says these words and with that intensity, there's a good chance the person has experienced something. Yes, I agree, we can put a label of he's cynical, he's always negative. We can put labels like that. But is it meeting your purpose in the room? Are you getting anything done in that meeting? Or you end up just fighting with a wall? You want to have a different experience with the same person, chuck the labels, start to connect to his feeling and his need. I'm asking you to tangibilize your empathy right there. He's feeling disappointed because his need is possibly progress. He needs a solid idea that works well. Now, you may not be able to fulfill that need. There's a good chance that you can't fulfill that need, but you can at least walk out by having made a relationship with that person. Many sales conversations don't necessarily turn towards an actual sale happening because the other person doesn't find your idea useful. Yet, if in that room you can identify what is the person feeling and what is the person's need, and if you can agree upon the fact that the person's need is very different without pushing your product in, without defending your product, if you can understand that the person has a different need and you speak to them in that language, wow, did you just win a relationship right there in the room? So imagine when you're in the purple chair and you actually say to Mr. Mehta, he says, this is a rubbish idea, it's not going to work. You took a moment in the green chair and then you said, Mr. Mehta, I can see that you have something to say. And I'm going to take a moment and put this presentation aside because I can sense that you've probably experienced some form of disappointment in the past. Somewhere, an idea like this has not worked. Can I hear from you? What happened? Where did something like this not work? What happened that you're saying that this won't work? And that curiosity that you put into the room to just listen to this person because you acknowledge what he's feeling and you acknowledge what he needs without defending yourself is where the power of connection happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that is a value for you. I would like to briefly take you through some more slides that will give you a little insight on how do we shift ourselves from the yellow chair to the blue chair, because a lot of us love the blue chair. So let me give you a few examples of how you shift yourself from the yellow chair to the blue chair. And I'm going back to the presentation right now, giving you an idea of where this is coming from. I love Lao Tzu's quote here. Watch your thoughts. That's what we were focusing on all this while in the chair. Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. And it all began with watching your thoughts, mastering the green chair. And while we're getting this, I'd like to take a moment. Give me a moment. Pardon me. What I was supposed to take you through has mistakenly been hidden, but this is what I needed to take you through right now into the presentation mode. Please. Thank you. Awesome. So now, how do we shift from the yellow chair to the blue chair? Let me give it to you right now. A lot depends on how you handle compliments when you're with people, right? You might sometimes think you're not good enough at something, unfortunately, it shows up. You may not want to show it to the world that you're not feeling very confident. It shows up in other forms, unverbal patterns. What? When we end up not receiving compliments very well. So somebody says, hey, great job. That was really good. Oh, it was nothing. Oh, well, the team was there. So the inability to receive a compliment like it came for you. Nobody's asking you to gloat on it. But when somebody says, hey, great work, you say, thank you. I'm so glad you liked it. And I would also like to acknowledge the team that worked so hard. So receiving it and then counting in the team is the powerful part to do. Oh no, it wasn't me at all. It was a team. It was this. That is what shows you in bad light. So other words to say when somebody says, hey, great job, we end up saying, no problem. Oh, no worries at all. People complimented you. Say thank you. I'm glad you said that. That's so kind of you to say. If somebody compliments you, for instance, now please look at that tip. Ask for their thought or opinion. Imagine a senior leader, or just imagine a senior leader in the organization says, hey, that was a really good presentation. I liked what you did over there. That's an opportunity for you to build conversation. So you were not just there on show. You actually worked hard for that presentation, right? So when you get a senior leader's attention, you make the most of it. So when you stand there, you say, thank you for saying that. What part of the presentation interested you the most? Or what are your thoughts about that subject I spoke about? Anything on your mind about it? This is the time for you to engage with them and really get to hear from their side about what's their opinion, because that's where you're really building your own, shall we say, influence. Now, that's about receiving compliments, but there's also about giving compliments. And how do we do that? See, now the thing with compliments is that we end up complimenting people, not, sorry, let me say this differently. We end up complimenting things and not people. How? Somebody does a great presentation, you say, hey, great presentation. Or somebody is wearing a really nice dress, you say, hey, great dress. You complimented the presentation. You complimented the dress. It is so much more powerful when you compliment the person. How? Hey, you delivered a great presentation. Your delivery was brilliant today. Hey, you look great in that dress. I hope, gentlemen, you're taking tips on this call right now for what you're going to say to your partners. But compliment the person, not the thing. When you do that, it's going to go straight to the heart, and the person is going to connect with your compliment beautifully in that moment. These are examples of how to put it. And if you can say something specific in that moment, something very specific for it, instead of saying great presentation, you would say, hey, you know what? I loved your delivery on the presentation, or I think you did a fab job on the presentation today, particularly when you're talking about cost saving and all those initiatives we can take. I think that was bang on. That's specific versus, hey, great presentation. All right, so that was one part. Now let's come to the next part. This is about catching our word patterns. See, I'm helping you become aware. If you are in these word patterns, means you're in the yellow chair. The beautiful part is, even if you haven't mastered the yellow chair, if you can start to catch the pattern and shift the pattern, you can begin to shift out of the chairs. That's how beautifully it works. It doesn't always have to begin at thought level. It works on the word level and then it shifts to the thought level too. It works backwards too. So, using the word just. We use the word just a little too casually sometimes, and I'm giving you an example. We end up using it in two ways often, which is, I'll just get this done. You're trying to show that you'll get something done very quick and fast. Or you may say, just send me an email. You're making it simple. You're like, or just click here, or just have it done, or just send it to that person. So you're telling something can happen very simply. Just give me a call. It's simplifying things. The unfortunate part is when we end up using the word just unconsciously, when we say, I have just one thing to say. Could I have just one moment? Could I just speak with you right now? I'm just an analyst. I'm just an intern. When we use the word just, unknowingly belittling ourselves and unknowingly almost having it appear as if you're begging for something, that speaks of where we're coming from. And my invitation to you, there's no replacement word to it. You literally just drop the word. So all these words can be just dropped and the statements change directly to, I wanted to say something. I have one point to make. I'd like to speak to you right now. Is this a good time? Your ability to drop the word just and ask for what you want. You want the blue chair to show up, give up this word, or be very conscious of it when you're working. All right. So this was what I wanted to take you through. And now quickly, another little journey from the yellow chair to the blue chair. I'd like to show you a video where we're talking about how many of us end up using the word sorry so often and we aren't quite aware of it. So I'd like to show you something right now in this moment.
Hey there, impact communicators. I believe there are many instances when we don't need to apologize. Like we don't need to apologize when we've got to say no. Or we don't need to apologize for being honest. We also don't need to apologize if we don't know an answer. And we don't need to apologize when we are clear about our priorities and we are standing our ground. My name is Meera Swaroop and I'm an impact communication coach. I work very closely with people to help achieve their goals by starting to shift the way they communicate with the relationships that matter. We unknowingly apologize in situations where it's not needed, and in the process, give up compassion for self. We're so judgmental and critical about ourselves, especially when we come from a space of what's good or bad, what's right or wrong. And then in that process of judging ourselves, our own self-expression dies. So can we start to apologize lesser and start to express from a space of self-worth and dignity? And a beautiful way to do that is to start identifying that what situations can you start to replace a sorry with a thank you. For example, I'm sorry I had to keep you waiting versus thank you for your patience while I got back to you. Sorry, I won't be able to do this versus thank you for asking and also for understanding why I can't do this right now. Sorry for venting and complaining versus thank you for listening to me and giving me this safe space to express myself. The key is to shift our focus from where we might be wrong or bad to where people are now meeting our needs, contributing to us. When managers shift, employees shift. When parents shift, children shift. When a person shifts, others shift. The key is to start impacting your communication by shifting one phrase at a time. I hope this was helpful. And for those of you interested in wanting to start,
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience while this happened. Any questions?
So we have received a couple of questions. So should we go ahead with them?
Yes, please.
Okay. One is, how can we improve communication in a virtual environment?
That's a good question. Thank you. Thank you for that. Peterson, when somebody asked that how can you improve communication in a virtual environment, something that I could quickly share with people is virtually, it's very essential for us to be showcasing ourselves in a very powerful way and making sure we don't come across as aggressive or a little too submissive. I'll give you an example of what aggressive looks like. Aggressive looks like when the screen is literally placed down and it looks like I'm looking top to down. So it's like, you've really put the screen, the phone or your laptop, your camera, something's down and you're really looking down. This gives an impression that you are the superior person when you're looking down on somebody. Unknowingly, you didn't mean to, but it ends up being like that. Similarly, if it looks like you're so close to the screen, it doesn't reflect very well on you. You may come across as a little too much, like we say, in the face, or not sure of your own self, how you're visible in the camera. So these two things make a significant difference to how we're presenting ourselves in the virtual world. The second thing that makes a significant difference is using gestures. So even when we're presenting, when you're presenting in a boardroom, everybody's able to see your hands and your body, all of that. But in the virtual space, this is all that's really visible. If you can show this, this is great. This is apt. Just a moment. So you can actually show this or that. But when you're in the virtual space and you want to use your hands have an amazing way of engaging people to stay with you, to stick with you. It has like a very, shall I say, a gluey effect provided it's in sync with what you're saying. It allows you to create a narrative. It's amazing for storytelling, and has people see that you're very passionate about expressing what you're expressing. It's very natural for me to use my hands because there is passion in what I share and what I do. So when you're passionately expressing something, it's very natural for you to do. Even if you're sharing statistics and data, if you can use this expression, using your fingers and your thumb together and expressing it on the screen then and there, that also has a powerful effect. I hope that is helpful.
Absolutely, Mira. Very, very keynotes. Like, no, I really like this particular information. When you talk about using your hands, it's very important. It gives the other person the kind of way that one person intends to communicate. Great. So we have another question from Sanjay. Please summarize the all chairs in brief again.
Okay. All right. Let's cause this for you, Sanjay. The red chair, attack, where you criticize, blame, label, strong opinion, or you play the game of right or wrong. Who's right? And you want to prove that I'm right. That's the red chair. So catching your thoughts. The yellow chair is literally the red chair inverted outside in. So you're blaming yourself, you're catching yourself, all of that. You're doubtful of yourself. It's like, whiplashing your own self. That's the yellow chair. The green chair is that moment of transformation where you begin to observe all the chatter that's happening here. In the red chair and the yellow chair, you rarely realize or are aware of the chatter here because the reaction has already come out. It's the green chair that makes you aware of the chatter here. And you can catch every word that you're thinking. And at the same time, you're not judging yourself for thinking like that. Like if there's a judgment that comes that says, this manager is so not worth it. I wish I could hit him right now. And then you judge yourself. How could a cool person like me lose my calm? So the longer you judge, you're just switching between the red and the yellow chair. But the minute you give up your judgment for the thoughts in your head, you're in the beautiful green chair. And then the blue chair is, like I said, I'm tangibilizing awareness for you. I'm tangibilizing empathy for you. Tangibilizing awareness about self is knowing at any one point in time, what am I feeling? What is my need? When you know that, you can ask for what you want. And in the purple chair, the intent is to connect with the other person. So in that chair, you're always going to be aware of what is the other person feeling and what is their need. Sometimes we're not aware of what they're feeling. So the ability to ask in conversation, the ability to say, I'm sensing that you're feeling upset. I still can't understand why. Could you tell me what happened? The purple chair helps you explore what is the person feeling, what does the person need. That's the chair's thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. Our next question is from Parvati. How to judge and avoid conflict person when he becomes aggressive in the meeting?
Okay, Peterson, I need to tell you, I have a hard stop at 4:10 because I have another meeting at 4:15. So we want to make sure we
Sure.
for that. At the same time, I want to answer Parvati's question. So Parvati is wanting to ask if we have somebody how do we judge that somebody is a little too aggressive and how do we avoid them? Parvati, for a first step, I would walk away from avoiding if I'm meeting somebody who comes across as aggressive for the first time. My intention would not be to avoid, especially if that person's opinion and thought matter for my work. The person could be a client, the person could be a stakeholder. The person isn't exactly some random person in the room who has no impact on what you do. The person certainly means something and has an impact on what you do. If you can identify that the person has a stakeholder impact on your work, then I'm going to avoid not talking to him. I'm actually going to try to see what can I do to connect with him. And even though aggression comes out, even though they come across as very pompous or very flamboyant or dominating in some way, because that's how we perceive it, I'd like you to, for a moment, get off that red chair and start to see what is he feeling and what does he need. If the person needs importance, would you become small if you gave the person importance? If the person is looking to be heard, would you become small because you allowed the person to be heard? Or would you be a contributor who allowed the person to be the way they are? That's the shift I'd like you to see, right? I hope that helps.